Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you all. So I am very glad to bring you all yet another tournament report as I have top 8'd yet another MCS. Yeah, I got my first top 8 in week 2 and finally got my second one here in week 13. I say finally because in between there I've managed to bubble, like go X2 without topping I think 3 different times, and then the last few weeks playing Tearlaments, I keep getting 5-3. So I was like, I was really ready to get another top, and I did manage to here in week 13, which I guess 13, funnily enough, ended up being pretty lucky for me. So this is the list with which we got top 8. Here's the main and extra anyway. We'll go over the side deck here momentarily. Before we go ahead and break down the list though, I just want to remind everyone, because I haven't talked about this at the beginning of a video in quite a while, I do have a Patreon that I've started a few months ago, and a little bit more recently than that, a couple of months ago, I also added a coaching tier. So with the Patreon there, you will get access to exclusive gameplay, games that I don't post on the YouTube channel, but only on the Patreon, as well as previews to videos coming up. I also like to do monthly Q&As over there as well, where you can ask me any question. You'll get a direct response from me. And then with the coaching tier, you get access to all of that. In addition to that, you get every month that you have the tier, a 60-minute coaching session one-on-one with me personally. So if that interests you, feel free to check out the link. It's going to be in the description below there. Much appreciated to all my patrons who are also credited at the end of every video as well, and anyone who even just checks out the page just to see what it's all about. I very much appreciate that. Thank you. So let's go ahead and talk about the list here. It's a little bit different from what I remember. I think it's actually a little bit different than the Season 17 list that I posted before. I'm trying to remember actually if the deck profile for Season 17 was this list or not. I don't think it was. I know I've talked about this list on Patreon in particular, but I don't think it's been discussed here on the YouTube channel yet. So it's only a couple of card differences, to be fair. I think just 2, if I remember right, 2 card difference in the main deck. Extra deck is still exactly the same. We'll go over that here in a moment. Let's go over the main deck first. So one of the things that I think you'll probably notice stands out to you is that I'm not playing any DD Crow. I have 0 DD Crow in this build. I have instead opted for a set of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. This was a recommendation who, I know I've talked about this before, Rulkallos, who is a very, very good Tearlament player. She has topped multiple MCSs, I think 3-time finalists, if I recall correctly, and yeah, I cannot speak to her ability to play this deck enough. She's an excellent duelist, and watching her streams, you know, I got a very good case argument for Ash Blossom, not even necessarily over DD Crow, but just in general in Tearlaments and in this format. Basically, the idea is that a lot of people think that Ash Blossom is like not great against Tearlaments because mainly I think the reason that people have this mentality is because if you use it on Kitkallos to stop the search, they can still sack her and, you know, summon a Tearlament monster at mill 5. But the thing about that is that, like, you're not even going to be using Ash Blossom in that case. More often than not, you'll probably, if you're going to use Kitkallos, or you're going to negate Kitkallos rather, you'd rather use something like Imperm. And while it's true that DD Crow does stop the Kitkallos summon from happening in the first place, it's also not a guarantee, kind of like Ash Blossom, that your opponent isn't going to have a follow-up play. Basically, both are kind of contingent on your opponent having like another Tearlaments monster in hand. Like, your opponent wouldn't get to search a Tearlaments monster with the Kitkallos, but they still might have another one in hand. Is kind of like the reason, again, I think people are a little bit down on Ash Blossom, and I was too initially, but Ash Blossom still has many, many uses in the mirror match. Mainly it blanks, not even mainly because it has so many, but one of my favorite interactions, or a couple of mine, is that it can blank Havnis and Scheiren. It'll prevent them from being summoned all together, as well as, of course, preventing their milling effects as well, which is extraordinarily good. Maxx is and always has been a factor here in Master Duel, so Ash Blossom is, of course, going to be good against that. There are situations where, like, sometimes even stopping, like, a Scream mill is really good. The ability to stop triple attack from drawing 2 is alright. Of course, we can stop both Terraforming and Perlerino searches, Foolish Burial Goods and or Sulliek searches. There are a lot of ways that you can utilize Ash Blossom in the mirror match, and I think one of the most important factors to Ash Blossom over DD Crow is that it's good beyond the mirror match. I think a lot of the time, especially in this meta, people will kind of over prepare. Well, I guess to be fair, if you're not playing Tearlaments, it's more right to prepare for tiers, but sometimes I feel like mirror matches will maybe a bit over prepare for the mirror match and kind of not keep in mind that, you know, there are other decks you're going to have to face there, namely like Flouanderies, which, you know, despite Map being at 1, Shifter being at 2, and Pot of Prosperity being at 1, is actually still like pretty much just the second best deck of this meta. So having Ash Blossom also just respects the fact that Flouanderies exists, as well as Exorcisters. Ash Blossom is very good against Exorcisters, being able to negate Martha, Vadis, like so many effects in that deck. So I think Ash Blossom just in general ends up being better than DD Crow. It's true that like we don't have any kind of like Bestial type effect in that, you know, banishing, you know, dark or light monsters from the opponent's graveyard, but I don't necessarily think that we need them in this kind of a metagame. I think the Ash Blossom does end up being better overall. Another thing that I have talked a little bit about on the channel, / I've seen people discuss is, well, you know, what are we putting in the place of Instant Fusion? Is it going to be Rhoda? Is it going to be Goods? Is it going to be Prosperity? I have ultimately ended up opting for both Rhoda and Foolish Burial Goods, and I decided to take out What If I Triple Tack. I ended up going down to 2 copies where I used to be playing 3. The reason that I decided to do this is I found in testing and in my previous weeks playing in tournaments that I wasn't opening Reinoheart quite as much as I wanted to. Basically, I found myself opening not enough gas and a little bit too much disruption / counterplay. So I decided to go to, I think it's like Yu-Gi-Oh! Party is the website. It's the one that'll give you like statistical breakdowns of odds of opening a card, right? And when I factored in the 3 Reinohearts, you know, Rhoda and or Foolish Burial Goods, Search It, Terraforming, Perlerino, I ended up coming up with a, I think, 57% chance to open Reinoheart, whereas cutting the triple tack and then putting in I think I had already had Foolish Burial Goods, so I put in Rhoda, that boosted it up to, oh god, what was the actual figure? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think it was like 65%, 64, 65, somewhere around there, which I think is a pretty notable boost, honestly. That did, in turn, of course, going down from 3 copies to 2 copies, decrease my odds of opening triple tack by about the similar difference of about 8%. But again, the thing I had noted in my testing and during previous, you know, tournaments is that I was opening stuff like triple tack too often and stuff like Reinoheart not often enough. So I think that Rhoda and Foolish Burial Goods both, I think there is merit to having both in the deck, just to be able to open your plays more often. There are, of course, plays you can have besides just Reinoheart, but Reinoheart is like a 1-card guaranteed, barring disruption, of course, guaranteed plays. So that's why I really value searching out the Reinoheart. Prosperity, I'm not a fan of. You know, if I was going to play it, it would have to be in addition to Rhoda and Foolish Burial Goods. I'd probably drop like a Scream for it. But the reason that I actually don't like Prosperity is that I think even banishing 3 cards in the extra deck is too high of a cost. Now, you might be thinking, well, there's a lot of games where you'll have like even more than half of your extra deck left, you know, by the end of a Tearlaments mirror match, and that is true. But the thing about Prosperity that I don't like is that it's really hard to know which extra deck monsters you're going to need, like at the beginning of turn 1 in a Tearlaments mirror match. Like, it's almost impossible to say, right? Like which one of these will end up coming up. So for that reason, I don't really like Prosperity, and you know, it's going to be at its best at the beginning of the game on, you know, the beginning of your turn 1. And just again, the fact that that's when you have the least amount of information of what extra deck cards you'll need. And yeah, just again, for that reason, I just am not a huge fan of it. Again, I don't think it's bad, but I would, if I was going to play it, would be after Rhoda and Foolish Burial Goods. Like I said, I was playing Foolish Burial Goods and then put in Rhoda, but I think the two are actually a lot closer than it may seem. Like, there are definite pros and cons to both, right? Like, Rhoda's pro is that you don't have to, you know, it's not reliant on binning a Sulliek to the graveyard, right? You can just play Rhoda and just straight up search your Reinoheart. That's the problem, though. That's the con, is that it only grabs Reinoheart. Foolish Burial Goods is a lot more diverse. By sending Sulliek, you can grab any Tearlaments name. You could also send a Scream to add one of your trap cards, or if you happen to have a Tear monster banish and you really want it, you could even send a Cryme, although that's a very, very niche case scenario. The con of Foolish Burial Goods is that if you've already milled Sulliek, then obviously it's not as good, or if you Foolish Burial Goods send Sulliek at the start of your turn and then mill the other one, then milling Sulliek becomes a lot lot worse. To be fair, because we're sending one copy, that does make it a lot, not a lot, but a little bit at least less likely that we're going to mill the other one of Sulliek left in deck, but at the same time, it does make that worse. So there are definitely pros and cons to both, but again, I've just decided to opt for both. Extra deck is, I think, really self-explanatory. This is a very standard tier extra deck. I think the Zoodiacs are like very rapidly becoming standard, so I don't think there's really a whole lot to explain there necessarily. I've opted not for Gigantic Sprite. I've seen a few builds playing that, but I just think it's very situational. Like, to be honest, I didn't summon Sprite Elf like once at all during the tournament, let alone have a situation where it was good to summon Sprite Elf, bring back a 2, like a Merrli that I have in graveyard but somehow haven't like summoned yet, and then do that and then go into a 3200 Gigantic. Like, it's very niche. To be fair, so are like Dugares and Bagooska. Bagooska, I think, you know, particularly to have against Philanderies is very, very good, or just any deck that like shifters you. Bagooska is one of the best responses to getting a shifter. You can just sit on it until you're good to attack. It can also very easily pivot into Zeus, which is very good against decks that want to shifter you. And the Dugares is just a catch-all great card. Like, any one of these 3 effects can be relevant. It's just like there's so many situations where it's like, what can I do to get out of this? And then Dugares will offer that very niche answer. I think I've used every one of these effects at some point during testing or in a tournament. Although in this tournament, I don't think I summoned Dugares at all either. The Zoodiacs, of course, again, fantastic. I think these are pretty much staples in the extra deck at this point. Same with Dweller. Mudragon I didn't end up summoning. That was the other extra deck card I didn't use at all, but that's because we're not playing Deity Crow. That is a positive to Deity Crows. That is more easy to summon the Mudragon because, you know, we don't have any other dark monsters in the main deck, so the only way we're going to summon Mudragon is by using an extra deck monster. Maybe I did actually do that once. Something, for some reason I feel like I did, but I could be getting that mixed up with a different game. Who knows? In any case, yeah, Mudragon. I think summoning Mudragon with Deity Crow is a fine thing to do, but I don't think it comes up super often. Not often enough to justify playing Deity Crow in the main deck, like, for that being a factor anyway. So, okay, here is the main and extra. And let's go ahead and just take a look at the side deck real quick here. This side deck was very cobbled together. I did not think it through. I really should have prepared a side deck beforehand, but I did not. But I side decked 3 Deity Crow, 3 Effect Veiler, my 3rd Triple Tactics Talent, 3 Twin Twister, 1 Cross-Eye Designator, 1 Tearlaments Heartbeat, and then 3 evenly matched. I think a lot of it is pretty self-explanatory, right? Like, my going first cards that I sided in were the 3rd Triple Attack and the Cross-Out Designator, just in case my opponent had Disruption. Otherwise, I tended not to side really much of anything else here going first. Going second in the mirror match, we bring in the Deity Crows and the Evenlies. And let's see, I actually wrote down what I sided out. Let's see. Against the mirror match, I sided in, yeah, the 3 Crows and Evenlies going second. And then I sided out 2 Agido, 1 Cryme, 1 Scream, the Fairy Tale Snow, and the Foolish Burial Goods. And yeah, then I also have the Veilers and Twin Twisters and Heartbeat. Those are mainly for Flow and Exosister, the rest of these. Against Flow in particular, you can pretty much just side out the Maxxs for Veilers, although I didn't quite do that. We'll go ahead and get into that a little bit later, but let's go ahead and break down my main and extra deck, as I always like to do, and then we'll take a look at some gameplay. So, we played 3 Maxx, 2 Tearlaments Merrli, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Tearlaments Havnis, 1 Fairy Tale Snow, 2 Tearlaments Scheiren, 3 Tearlaments Reinoheart, 2 Keldo the Sacred Protector, 3 Mudora the Sword Oracle, 2 Kelbek the Ancient Vanguard, 2 Agido the Ancient Sentinel, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Terraforming, 1 Foolish Burial Goods, 2 Triple Tactic Talent, 1 Primeval Planet, Perlerino, 3 Tearlaments Scream, 3 Infinite Impermanence, 1 Tearlaments Cryme, 2 Tearlaments Sulliek, 1 1 Mudragon of the Swamp, 1 Tearlaments Kitkallos, 1 Predaplant Dragostapelia, 1 Tearlaments Rulkallos, 1 Tearlaments Kaliedo-Heart, 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Zoodiac Drident, 1 Zoodiac Boarbow, 1 Zoodiac Chakanine, 1 number 41 Bagooska, the terribly tired Tapir, 1 Time Thief Redoer, 1 number 60 Dugares, the Timeless, 1 Divine Arsenal, Zeus, Sky Thunder, 1 Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy, and then 1 Sprite Elf. Alright, there is our list. Now let's look at these games from the tournament. Alright, so we'll go over here to our replays. And yeah, these replays were all from the MCS here. So I'm going to be showing off, let's see, it was, boom, boom, boom. Okay, so 5 Swiss rounds, and then we'll take a look at a few of our top cut games there as well. So this was my round 1, if I recall correctly. Yes, and it was against Fluondery. So let's go ahead and take a look at this duel first. Yeah, you'll notice I kept both of my losses in, actually, as replays we're going to watch, because I think they were both pretty interesting duels. I did end up going X2. It was 10th place was my standing after, what was it, after finals there, or after the Swiss ended into finals. So, I'm going first, and I'm really glad I did, looking at my opponent's hand. Their hand is absolutely cracked if they had a chance to go first, but they didn't, so that's really good. But yeah, I didn't actually end up knowing I was playing against Fluonderies, of course, because this is turn 1, so I did not activate this Kelbek here. Naturally, had I known I was playing against Flo, Kelbek definitely would have gotten procced, but it's all good. We can definitely still just go into our Kitkallos here off of the Reinoheart. And it's going to be a very standard turn 1 here, just, you know, getting it twisted, millinate, the same old, the usual, so on and so forth. We end up milling a Havnis there, as well as Snow. A couple Mudoras, another Kelbek, but again, not going to be proccing it because I don't know that I'm up against Fluonderies here. I think that is a very good rule of thumb that I've preached in a lot of previous videos, but if you don't know what you're up against, don't just fire off your millers, because it could very easily be the mirror match. Made a Rulkallos because, once again, did not know I was up against Flo. Also the reason I Maxxed during the draw phase. Here, the Flo player is going to reveal themselves as Fluonderies. They start by activating the map and then following up with a Advent of Adventure. I'm definitely going to go ahead and utilize my Ash Blossom here, but as you can see, they already have Robina and Eaglin in hand because their hand was just very, very good overall. So, yeah, not ideal because I don't have, you know, like, against Fluonderies, you want Dragostapelia, not the Rulkallos, that's for sure. So, I always want to say Rulkallos. I told her this in a recent stream. I always want to say Rulkallos instead of Rulkallos whenever I talk about this card in a video, but didn't mill a Miller or anything, but I did ultimately end up milling a Sulliek, so I'm going to go ahead and activate that, as well as my Snow here. I want to summon the Snow now, so that way when the whatever they summon off of the Eaglin is played, I can potentially turn it face down with the Snow. But they didn't end up tribute summoning, they just went for a token instead. I'm trying to remember if they searched that with the Robina. No, they added a DD Crow, so I didn't know they had a token. So that's unfortunate because, you know, putting one of these face down doesn't, like, do anything at all. So, yeah. All the same, I am still going to be able to... oh, I'm trying to Merrli here. I knew they had the DD Crow, but I'll just use my Mudora to put the Merrli back in my deck. That way it at least doesn't get banished. And not too many uses for the Shufflers outside of that, although I will say that Dreaming Town is something to be mindful of. Of course, my opponent doesn't have it set up here, but if they had a Dreaming Town set up, we would definitely want to be mindful of utilizing the, what do you call it, the Shufflers against that, so that our stuff doesn't get turned face down. So it turns out that Rulkallos actually does proc off of Unexplored Winds. Didn't know that, but that's cool. Gonna summon a defense mode. It's not gonna matter though, because they just have this Apex Avian to tribute my Rulkallos again. So there is the Dreaming Town set, and things don't look super great for me here, you know? But fortunately for me, my opponent actually ended up leaving the Snow on the field, the level 4 monster. So to be fair, I could have, you know, summoned it again anyway, and also turned something face down, so it makes sense. But it's really good for me to have a level 4 monster, as well as Perlerino. I actually got, you know, the best possible top deck you could, but of course, my opponent's got Apex Avian. So here it's going to do little more than act as bait, but thankfully I already had the Reinoheart in my hand. So I'm just going to go ahead and fire that and the Scream off here. And my opponent does get to use the map because I am normal summoning, but that's fine because I get to fuse from stuff in my graveyard. That'll leave 2 level 4s on board to potentially make it rank 4. I still have a lot of options here. This is one of those games where it's like, you know, a lot of people might just like concede in frustration because, you know, they don't like playing against Fluonderies, and they just all they do is play during my turn. They can just summon the Apex Avian again, and they still have the Dreaming Town. They have so many things here. What can I even do? But I think keeping a cool head is absolutely the most important part of playing in, you know, tournaments like this. Like, this was my round 1 here, so you know, I definitely got to make sure to play through this with a cool head now if I'm going to make sure that I'm going to do well, you know, in future rounds as well. So, I'm going to summon the Kaliedo-Heart and the Kitkallos, of course, summoning both of those in defense mode so that way I get their effects and they're not negated by the M-Pen. That does, of course, come with the Catch-22 that I'm not able to attack with them, but, you know, I would definitely rather the effects resolve. So, I'm going to chain block by putting the Scream at the end, and that is going to be what my opponent ends up negating with the Apex Avian. I'm going to grab a Sulliek anyway, though, even though my Trap Search off the Scream got negated. Going to grab a Sulliek with that Kitkallos, because having the ability to negate your opponent's monster effects is, against Flaunderies in particular, is valued very, very highly. So now you can probably guess what I'm going for next here, as I summon the Zoodiac Chakanine. My opponent's going to Dreaming Town, but they've already used pretty much every Flaunderies name by this point, so they're not really able to do much with it, honestly. And yeah, here's the Chakanine going into Drident. Gonna activate the Drident's effect to, of course, pop the M-Pen. That way my effects won't get negated here. Now from Drident, I'm going to go into the Boarbow. Although, to be fair, Boarbow's not an activated effect, and Zeus will be summoned in defense mode anyway, so getting rid of M-Pen wasn't necessary. I just did it. Just because I could. So, here is El Zeusarino. We're going to go ahead and fire the effect off, detaching 2 to get rid of this board, and that will trigger both my Kitkallos and my Kaliedo-Heart. And I still even have 2 more materials on the Zeus there. My Kaliedo-Heart is going to get hit by a DD Crow. That's pretty rough, but honestly, worse things could have happened there. We still have we still have the Snow, rather, not the Crow, in Graveyard. We have a Zeus available as well. We ended up milling Scheiren and Agido, which now I will proc the millers, because of course I know I'm up against a deck that does not benefit from having their stuff milled. Quite the opposite, actually. And I'm going to fuse my Scheiren and the, what is it called? Kitkallos. Now, rather than go for Dragostapelia, I end up going for Rulkallos again. Why, you might ask? Well, because I have a Sulliek, and I know my opponent has a Rabina in hand. I value the repeatable negation of the Sulliek over the... To be fair, Dragostapelia is repeatable as well, but I value the Sulliek here because it not only is repeatable, but it also has the potential to proc my tier names. Also, this is a little bit better, I think, with Zeus, although now I can't bring back the Rulkallos, but... going into the turn, it was a little bit better with the Zeus to potentially send the Rulkallos, but again, I just value the effect negation from the Sulliek too much to Zeus it away, so gonna normal summon a Reinoheart here. My opponent's got a Dreaming Town, but again, as we already mentioned, the Sulliek negation is repeatable, so as my opponent goes to activate the Rabina effect here, I can once again just activate my Sulliek and go ahead and yeah, just negate it. Definitely don't want to send the Rulkallos. Oh, you know what? I do actually end up sending the Rulkallos, though. I always forget that it's fusion summoned. It's got to be fusion summoned to bring itself back, so... Maybe I should have sent the Reinoheart here, although to be fair, I guess there are merits keeping Reinoheart on the board for potentially going into a... who am I kidding? No, we definitely should have kept Rulkallos. I can't justify that, but it's not going to really super matter at this point. Oh no, you know what? Was I thinking about going for the... that's right, I was thinking about going for the Redoer. I actually totally forgot about that. So that is actually, I think, why I sent the Rulkallos, if I recall correctly. I don't know why I threw it in the extra monster zone, just because I could, because why not? We can battle with Redoer and then activate Redoer's effect. That will bring back the Reinoheart, and that will let us send Merrli. That's going to let us fuse yet again. And then now we can use the Rulkallos to go into Dragostapelia. Although this, I think, should be just enough damage to win the duel, right? Yeah. I mean, it's far more than enough. The Dragostapelia wasn't even necessary, but... Yeah, that's a game against Flaunderies that was a very good back and forth. It was a very good duel one to have. Even winning the coin flip and assuming I was playing against the mirror match and playing that way, I still managed to eke out a win against Flo there. So let's go ahead and take a look at this next game I had against Ver, who was on the mirror match here. I don't remember much about this game off the top of my head, so let's see how it played out. I think I went... Did I go second? The duel was 4 turns long, so I guess, assuming I actually attacked for lethal, I would have gone second here. Yeah, I did go second. Okay, cool. Good. I wanted to show a going second game against the mirror match. Oh, yeah. This game, of course. Going second against the mirror turns out is not quite so bad when you happen to open up every good going second card in the world here. Although, To be fair, it's pretty likely that my opponent was just going to pass after I max seed, and this hand isn't super great against that, although this Merrli might bail us out of it. Opponent's going to similarly draw phase max C, but I have the Ash Blossom here. Both of us are maxing during the draw phase, by the way, to play around Triple Tactics talent. Alright, let's normal summon the Merrli, and then Mill, and see what we get here. So I want to talk about this for a second. So I know I talked about how earlier in this video, it's generally not good to, activate the Millers if you don't know what you're up against. Here's the thing, though. In this situation, if I don't activate the Agido effect, then I just have to pass back to my opponent with like a Merrli in attack position and nothing else. And that's going to be pretty bad. I think even if my opponent is going to be on the mirror and they do hit a lot of live things in the graveyard, which they do, I think that ultimately in this specific situation, it was right to activate Agido. There is a bit of nuance. I will say as a rule of thumb, you should activate Millers during your opponent's turn, but you should not activate them during your turn. However, it's nuanced, as is every decision point, right? And there are situations like this one where you want to activate a Miller during your turn. Similarly, there are also situations where you would not want to activate a Miller during your opponent's turn. But here we are going to get it twisted, as the kids say, and activate our Agido. That's going to end up milling the Reinoheart, the Sulliek, and the Scream. Will proc all of those. Opponent's going to proc their Merrli and Sulliek as well. So we've got a duel. This is definitely going to be a back and forth one, and we've already used Ash Blossom, so this other one in our hand, at least for this turn, is not going to actually be doing us a whole lot of good here. Alright, I'm going to throw this in fast forward, because I notice we're already coming up on 30 minutes, and I would like to get to our top cut games in a reasonable amount of time as well. So, opponent's going to DD Crow and stop my Havnis there. Sending their own Havnis, and I end up sending the Merrli. I'm going to Kelbek to put back their Kitkallos. It's actually pretty important because now they can't go for Rulkallos, and they have to either go for Mudragon or Kitkallos again. So that Kelbek was crucial because Mudragon would have very much messed me up there. So very glad to have been able to use a Kelbek against the Kitkallos there. But it's going to actually end up doing the same thing, but fortunately for me, I still have the ability to enter my battle phase here, so I'm going to go for a Dweller and then detach before going into good old Zeus. Opponent's going to try to use their Shuffler while they can. I'm going to actually summon the Snow because I would very much like to have access to Snow during my opponent's turn here. Let's battle over a couple of our monsters, and then we get to go into Zeus. Opponent's got a decent amount of fodder in their graveyard for their own Fairy Tale Snow here, but I've got this Sulliek with the Havnis as well as an Ash Blossom in my hand, so the opponent top decks Perlerino, but I at the very least get to stop the Surge with the Ash Blossom here. Summoning Mudora, setting the Sulliek, and then passing back to me. So top decking a Merrli, not bad at all. Gonna go ahead and normal summon that. And I'm also going to chain the Sulliek, trying to negate the Mudora. I want to do it this way to force the Mudora as well as the Perlerino here. My thought process here is let's just go ahead and get both over with, right? Perlerino is actually going to end up blowing up their own back row Sulliek, which is a little bit annoying, but definitely not too bad here. But it's going to, of course, go ahead and get that search for a Havnis. I then get to fuse for a Kitkallos here. I'm going to activate the effect that will proc the Havnis. The reason I didn't just go for a battle phase there is, of course, because my opponent has Snow in the graveyard, and this amount of damage or this board presence alone would not be enough to take care of that. Gonna use my Shuffler and force the Fairy Tale Snow. They end up turning my Kitkallos face down, which is completely fine because I can still fuse with that to make a Rulkallos, and now I can use Rulkallos to negate the Snow summon. So yeah, I definitely have enough damage now for lethal. As I go to attack with the Merrli, my opponent's going to try to activate Snow. I'm going to use the Rulkallos effect, so they now no longer have enough resources to make the Snow, and that is going to win me the duel. So that was a good example of a duel where we went second, but managed to get the win against Tapir. Again, to be fair, we had a great going second hand, though, as well. So, let's go ahead and take a look at this next game against Saizumu. Saizumu, I'm not actually sure how their name is pronounced, so apologies if I mispronounced it. They're on Flunderies and are an excellent Flunderies player. I end up going second here, and as you can see, my opponent has a pretty decent starting hand here, although it is notably lacking Robina. My opponent's going to start with an Extravagance, and then normal summon DD Crow set Dreaming Town pass. And now, when I saw summon Crow set 1 pass, I was like, what could they possibly be on here? Like, what could that back row be where normal summon DD Crow is right? So, I'm just going to play my turn normally and not try to do anything weird, like to try to play around it, right? I'm just going to Scream and Reinoheart. Opponent does have a Maxx C, although I have the attack here, so I'm pretty determined to go for the win. And then I see my opponent is on Dreaming Town as their back row, so now they get to normal Rabina, and the DD Crow actually is going to end up being an extra tribute fodder here, is why I believe they normal summoned it. Unless I misremembering, Dreaming Town requires you to like... Hang on, I'm going to go ahead and go back to it. This doesn't need you to have a winged beast on the field, right? Yeah, no, definitely not. I did end up putting the Dreaming Town back because I did not want to get messed up by the, it turning my stuff face down. Although I should have waited if I was going to activate a Miller, to be fair, but... Yeah, that normal summon DD Crow set Dreaming Town, that really threw me off. That was a very good move on Suzuru's part. Very, very nicely played. So here I do get to make plays, but as you can see, unfortunately I'm going to have to end up giving my opponent a ton of draws off of Maxx C here. And it's not even like enough for... Oh, you know what? I think it would have been enough for lethal if I had actually attacked with Kitkallos and not Reinoheart. Because I didn't realize that Impen would flip up and then the effect would activate to have its attack. But I think I was like 1500 off of lethal here. Because I could have summoned back Snow from my graveyard, which, yeah, shoot. I think if I had actually battled with Kitkallos into the Impen instead of the Reinoheart, I think that would have been lethal. I thought about that after this turn. That's rough. I think that was actually an opportunity I could have, gotten the game and misplayed it there. It's definitely unfortunate, but misplays are going to happen. It's just a part of playing, especially when, I'm not going to pretend that, like, when you're playing in a tournament, you're not under at least a little bit of stress, right? Because it's not like ladder, where in order to ultimately get, to rank up, you just need an above 50% win rate. You got to win, like... Ideally 7, but at the very least 6 of your games in a tournament out of 8. So, yeah, I mean, misplays are going to happen, but, even though I misplayed here and it does ultimately end up costing me the duel, I still topped. So, definitely don't let that get you down. I think it's very easy to misplay, realize you missed lethal, and then lose the duel afterward, and just, like, beat yourself up over it. And there are, a decent amount of times where I end up doing that to myself, but... it's like I said at the start of the video, I think one of the most important takeaways is that cooler heads will prevail. So that's not just true of each individual game, that's also true of an overall tournament or even season-long experience. And yeah, I mean, even though I'm in a position here where my opponent just gets to style over me during my own turn, and I can't really do much about it, there's no reason I can't bounce back in future rounds, which again, spoiler alert, I do end up doing that. So... Alright, at this point, I'm mostly just looking to get to the end of this replay here. Yeah, I decided to try to go for a last-ditch Snow that ultimately doesn't even do anything because my opponent can still, Dreaming Town and flip all my stuff down, so... There was, like, a spark of hope. I think we had, like, somewhere in the neighborhood of, like, 8 minutes left in the round at this point, so I was like, oh, maybe I can get a win in time, but, yeah, no. It's all good. I mean, I'd like to win in ways other than time, ideally. Yeah, no, my opponent actually very easily picked off my board and then swung in with everything for lethal, so... Very good games to Saizumi there. And alright, let's go ahead and go into our next Swiss game. This was going to be yet another mirror match game. Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm not going to show this duel. I'm not going to bother showing it because it was a very quick duel. My opponent was totally bricked up. I don't even know why I saved this. My opponent was bricked up. They summoned Cyberstein. I negated it, and then the duel was pretty much over from there. So, this was my other loss in Swiss, was to -1, who was on branded Tearlament. I should have actually saved my... I actually forgot to save my round 8 win. I thought that was a pretty decent mirror match, if I recall correctly. I just forgot to save the replay before I disbanded the room. So, This was actually, this match was featured here. I have this curse at the MCS where I don't think I've won a single match I've been featured in. Like, in my best of one, or in my, best of one games in Swiss, I don't win, and then, I got featured in top 8, actually, but ultimately did not end up winning either. So thankfully, my opponent doesn't have too much after I Ash Blossom the Branded Fusion, although I'm pretty convinced just from the way that they normal summon to have just to set this back row that it's Sulliek, so that's why I didn't search up a Reinoheart here and tried to go for Scheiren instead. I think ultimately, you know, pretty much the same thing would have happened, except if I had milled a little bit with Scheiren, I could have high rolled a little bit. Because the thing is, if it's Sulliek, you know, Reinoheart just gets negated and I don't mill anything, but again, here, I at least mill 3 and I have a chance to high roll, was my reasoning for searching Scheiren here instead of the Reinoheart. Alright, so yeah, opponent's got the Keldo, and then I'm just going to go into a Branded Fusion. I do have some negates here, so I can stop like this Libellion. But the problem is I don't have anything to fuse with a Scheiren in my graveyard, right? So I guess you could argue that maybe this is a situation where the DD Crow might have been better, because I could have at the very least fused for Mudragon. I maybe could have popped, I don't know, Libellion with Perlerino. I don't think it would have very much mattered, though, honestly. Like, it would not have been the difference, I don't think, in that situation. But I managed to top deck a Reinoheart, but it's not enough here, even with my own Sulliek to counter theirs. This is just not going to be enough. I think I concede here pretty shortly. Yeah, it's after this. Yep, so there we go. That was my other loss in Swiss there. My other wins in Swiss, there wasn't too much to them. It was pretty much just like, I guess, I don't know, opening standard tier plays or having enough disruption, regardless going first or second. My coin tosses were pretty even. I didn't keep track of those, though. In any case, let's go ahead and move on to our top cut. So let's start with a top 16 game against CJ 164 here. We're on a mirror match. Opponent's main deck in Gammas, which is interesting. They've got Cyberstein, and otherwise things looking pretty. Things are looking relatively standard here. So they do have Lambda in the extra deck as well with the Gamma. I think it's a pretty cool tech, honestly. So let's go and take a look at this top 16 duel here. Alright, so my opponent ended up winning the coin flip here, although we opened Imperm here, which is pretty nice. Opponent's going to start off with a Scheiren, pitching the Mudora, milling 3, they end up hitting a Havnis, and they also get to proc the Reinoheart here as well. So, definitely rough to have your opponent open like this going into game 1 after losing the coin flip. But, I mean, you know, it is what it is. Just gotta make the most of the situation. So I'm definitely gonna still use the Imperm with the Kitkallos here and not the Reinoheart, because I definitely don't want it to be searching or milling here. They're gonna get to fuse more either way, so even if I negate the Reinoheart, like, Kitkallos is, yeah, the obvious negate here. So it's gonna bin a Merrli and then, yep, activate the effect. It's like diffusing it in the Kitkallos to make a Rulkallos. It's annoying, but it is what it is. And then they're going for the Time Thief Redoer. Looks like they're saving that fusion effect with Scheiren for my turn here. Definitely makes a lot of sense. But it's going to Maxx, but I thankfully top decked the Ash Blossom. I mean, I would have liked Ash Blossom over, like, say, Mudora or something in the opening hand, but we'll definitely take Ash Blossom here to stop the maximum C. So, but it's going to fire off their Time Thief Redoer effect during the standby phase. That took, I believe, a Mudora. Yes, a Mudora. Thankfully, I have this Terraforming, so I'm going to go ahead and use that to grab Perlerino, which I will then activate to grab a Reinoheart. Before I actually normal summon the Reinoheart here, I'm going to special Scheiren and pitch Mudora, because my opponent's got some shufflers in the graveyard. I don't want to go straight into the Reinoheart play. Did end up milling a Scheiren, so that's going to end up forcing the Mudora there. And they're going to, of course, be targeting my Mudoras as well. I decided to fire off a Mudora just to get another shuffler out of their graveyard, just in case it comes up later. And yeah, we're going to end up moving forward with neither of us having shufflers in the graveyard now. So, get the search for the Sulliek off the Scream, and Scheiren, of course, is going to fizzle. I will use this opportunity, though, with Perlerino to force the Time Thief Redoer. Have my opponent do that now before an opportunity where, you know, they would want to do it, where they would have more information. Looks like they're going for Kitkallos here, and I am presuming they're going to add a Havnis, if I recall correctly. Oh no, they bin the Merrli, they're just going to go for a fusion now, that's right. For a Dragostapelia. So, facing down the Dragostapelia and the Rulkallos, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the Reinoheart effect here. That might have been a bit of a misplay, although to be fair, whether I activate the effect or not, my opponent can use Dragostapelia to make my Reinohearts level 1 regardless. So, things don't look super great for me here, as my opponent's Redoer comes back and is going to grab a spell card off the top of my deck. Detaching the talent to draw a card. Looks like they got a Mudora, which you're going to normal summon. Liquid with the Redoer to go for the Lambda. At this point, I was like, oh, well, they have to have Gamma in their hand, so let's get it over with. I'm going to Mudora and target the Mudora. Sure enough, here comes the Gamma. And I was like, oh my god, if they actually sync for like Chaos Ruler, this person's the best player in the world, but I do not think they have a level 8 Synchro Monster, their extra deck from what I recall looking at earlier. So, get a Sulliek, sending this Reinoheart that's getting targeted for an attack to negate the Rulkallos. This will force my opponent's Mudora, and now the Rulkallos is no longer a factor for future turns either. This also will trigger the Perlerino, which is going to end up popping their Dragostapelia and forcing that as well. So, even though my opponent, you know, obviously had a good bit of advantage moving forward into this turn, I've actually managed to disarm quite a bit of it. I forced out the Gamma, I negated the Rulkallos, I blew up the Dragostapelia, so they don't really have a whole lot else to move into. Let's see, looks like they're linking for a Sprite Elf, but as you can see, their graveyard doesn't really have a whole lot to go for. They have a Maxx and they have the Lambda. I was a little bit concerned that maybe their card in hand would be another Gamma, which you would actually be able to use if they brought back the Lambda with Elf, and because they have Driver in the graveyard. But I get to just use the Sulliek here to negate the Elf, because of course the Rulkallos is still negated from Sulliek earlier. Sulliek is not until the end of the turn. Sulliek just outright negates the card's effects, so for as long as it's face up on the field. And let's go, we end up hitting a fusion here. Definitely love to see that. So I get to summon the Kitkallos. That'll let me search up a Reinoheart because I haven't summoned that yet. I did already normal summon Merrli, so I'm not going to search that, but going to chain the order of Reinoheart and then Kitkallos because the Reinoheart is a guaranteed to mill for some action, and I also want to see what I mill off of Kitkallos before I commit to sending something off of Reinoheart, just to like not hit two of the same thing or something like that. So, alright, after milling 5, we get to proc both Scheiren and Scream. I'm going to add a Cryme here to shore up my defenses against anything my opponent could have here, and with the Scheiren, I am going to go for a Kaliedo-Heart. Now I get to put the Rulkallos back into the opponent's deck, battle over their board. I should have popped Maxx here, but I decided to pop Elf instead for some reason. I missed out on some damage, but you know, the rounds in top cut aren't timed, so I wasn't concerned about that. And yeah, now going into my opponent's turn, I have Kaliedo-Heart, Sulliek, Perlerino, and Cryme that is alive, going into my opponent in pretty much top deck mode. So that's pretty good if you ask me. Opponent didn't end up even top decking anything relevant here, it's just a Maxx. I, on the other hand, got a Reinoheart. So yeah, a duel that looked really hopeless for a lot of it actually turned around. And I think this is another great example of showing just how far you can go with what seems like a, not even necessarily a bad hand, but again, I was very behind at the start of this duel, but we managed to catch back up very nicely there. Alright. Yep, now I get to just battle. I have enough damage on board here, so we'll just go ahead and go for that, and beautiful. All right, that is game 1 of top 16. So top 16 is, of course, going to be best of 3. And, oh, I already mentioned this during the profile, but just for a reminder, what I side decked going second here, going into game 2 here, I sided out 2 Agido, so sided out both the Agido. I sided out Cryme, Scream, Snow, and Foolish Burial Goods, siding in 3 DD Crow and 3 Evenly Matched. So it's obvious why I brought in Crows and Evenlies, right? Those are both very good going second against Tears. As far as what I cited out, Agido, Millers in general don't have as much utility, and Agido's effect going second doesn't feel like it's going to be particularly relevant most of the time. Kelbek could still be relevant, so I decided to keep that in the deck there. Kelbek actually has a pretty good disruption tool. Took out Cryme because we can't set it up going first, so it's not as good. Took out Scream because Screams tend to be better going first. So I took one of those out. Fairy Tale Snow, maybe I should have actually ended up leaving that one in, but my thought process was that I wasn't going to have the first turn to set up, so it was going to ultimately be less likely that Snow was going to be like even live if I did mill it. So I ended up signing that out, and then Foolish Burial Goods, I think I decided I could afford to cut back on a little bit of that turn one consistency because, again, we're not going first. So let's go ahead and take a look at this other game here, which, I mean, spoiler alert, I did end up winning it. I actually managed to get a 2-0 win here. So I'll go ahead and show you how I did that in game 2 here. Going second yet again. Yeah, we have a very, very good going second hand. This is how, we got the win here. But this is ideal, This is what we want to see, especially after side decking. Although, to be fair, the only sideboard card I see here is DD Crow. But yeah, Maxx, I mean, literally could not ask for a better going second hand, right? Maxx, DD Crow, Ash Blossom, Kelbek, and then the Reinoheart for plays on our turn. So, pitch perfect hand. Speaking of pitching, I'm going to pitch the Maxx during the draw phase to play around a potential triple tactics. I'm not going to Ash Blossom the Reinoheart, but I will DD Crow the Merrli, just to get that out of the way. It's funny here because if you look, the Maxx actually didn't even really end up being relevant. Like, if I had not even activated Maxx, my opponent, there's nothing really different that would have happened, right? I still would have DD Crow'd the Merrli and then my opponent would have passed. So, Maxx just really, honestly, didn't even end up being a factor here. So I'm going to normal summon the Reinoheart. Opponent is going to pop off their Maxx, but I thankfully have this Scheiren that I was very lucky to top deck. To be fair, I won't lie, this is like the god hand in pretty much every respect, right? So I did get very lucky in that regard, even if Maxx did not end up mattering. So gonna activate the Scheiren, obviously not activating the Kelbek. Ultimately decided to go for the Time Thief Redoer. I made a minor misplay here. I actually should have battled with the Redoer and then activated the effect during the battle phase. Because what I'm ultimately going to do is Merrli and mill 8, but I still need to clear my opponent's Reinoheart first. There are some niche cases where it might have mattered that I battled with Redoer to potentially go into the Zeus on main phase 2, but I don't really see a scenario where it's good to go into Zeus here, honestly, so I don't think it ultimately ends up mattering. I guess I also technically miss out on 100 points of damage, which again I don't really think it's going to matter. Alright, so we're milling 8, getting it twisted, and we actually kind of whiff here. I only get the Scream as the only relevant effect here, but the Sulliek Search is a very relevant ability. So Time Thief Redoer is going to activate here and detach the I want to actually go ahead and pause this because my opponent was on a pretty cool side deck plan. The Hidden City is actually what I end up taking there, because my opponent sided in a whole Subterra engine, which is pretty rad going first. But yeah, I got stupid lucky here. Now here's where I get stupid lucky again, and now here's where Maxx matters a lot, is because, I take this during the standby phase, and I'm like, you know what, let's activate it now just to see if we get a Maxx and try not to proc triple attack if we can avoid it, and then lo and behold, I actually got Maxx, so that's insane. Opponent is going to Kelbek, though, and bounce my Merrli back to my hand, so now they've turned off that Sulliek. Definitely not good for me, as I then go to normal summon their Reinoheart, but thankfully I have a Mudora here to stop that Havnis. I'm also going to put back one of my Reinohearts and a Rhoda to give myself some better top decks / draws off Maxx here. So, opponent is going to use their 2 level 4s to go into an Xyz monster. It's going to be their own Time Thief Redoer, because there's not another rank 4 that can actually battle over Redoer. I top deck a Terraforming off that Maxx there, so that's pretty nice. Looks like they're going to proc Redoer to get their Reinoheart, and that will send Merrli, allowing that to activate. Now they get to go for a Kitkallos. This is all ultimately just going to fuel my hand, though, with this Maxx. I think there is a point we're rapidly approaching here where, they've given me so many draws, I don't know I don't know. I don't really know like what they could do here that's gonna be better than like all my cards in hand. Like I don't think they have the ability to lethal me here anymore, but I could be wrong about that. I am actually going to use the Ash Blossom here just to make their mills a little bit worse, hopefully, but no, they actually just end up milling a fusion name, both their millers, and a Fairy Tale Snow off the 5 anyway, so yeah, here's their Rulkallos. Thankfully, though, I did top deck this DD Crow at the last second to stop the Fairy Tale Snow from coming back, so no, like, Dweller Zeusing from my opponent here or anything crazy like that, thank God. And then, yeah, they just conceded at that point. Alright, so there is that top 16 match. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the top 8 games, which actually were shown during the, they were featured during the top cut. So I didn't save my game 1. I actually went up against Saizuma yet again. I didn't save game 1 because it was literally almost an exact repeat of the last game where my opponent ultimately ended on DD Crow and Dreaming Town and just comboed me out during my turn. Particularly their Dreaming Town, like, prevented me from going into a rank 4 at all, which prevented my ability to play, like, whatsoever. But we're going to go ahead and get into game 2 here. This match, even though I did not ultimately end up winning, I did at least manage to get 1 game win here. So let's go ahead and go into that. And I think in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and throw these last 2 games into fast forward here. So, as you can see, we're up against Flo. Game 2, I opted to go first. I sided in a 3rd triple attack and a crossout designator, as well as a Veiler. And then I sided out my Maxx for this game here. So because, of course, this is game 2, and also because I played against Saizuma and Swiss, I know I'm up against Flo, so we're definitely going to be proccing our millers here, and yeah, we get to just do everything here with this kind of a hand. So I'm going to go for a little bit of a wonky setup, or it's going to look wonky, but against Flo's, I think what I did here was ultimately the right call. I'm going to set up multiple effect negates. I'm also going to set up a Time Thief Redoer in case I need to go for a Kaliedo-Heart. And then I'm also going to get to set up a Zoodiac Drident to stop a map or an unexplored winds from potentially being good here as well. Looking at my opponent's hand, they opened the map, so I'm definitely glad I made this Drident. They opened Terraforming as well, which is unlucky. Standby phase, I grab a spell card, an Extravagance, so that's pretty nice. Opponent's going to Duality to reveal the top 3. They're going to end up grabbing Mega Ryza off of that. I'm going to wait for them to activate the map's effect, that way they can't do it again if they somehow manage to recycle it back to their hand. Because there is a world where they like stream banish map and then token and wheel it back and then activate it again. So we'll wait for the map effect to activate, then blow it up with Drident. Now thankfully, even though my opponent managed to kind of curtail the first negate with Dragostapelia, I had the Sulliek prepared as well, and that's just going to go ahead and get me that win there. So let's go ahead and go into game 3. For this one, I sided in Evenly's. Twin Twisters, Heartbeat, and my other 2 Veilers. I sided out a couple of engine cards and the Shizu stuff, like I think 1 Agido, 1 Mudora, 1 Scream. I sided out Cryme. I sided out my triple tax. What else is that? That's like 5 cards. I can't remember what else off the top of my head. I should have written that down. I didn't though. I don't remember what else off the top of my head I ended up siding out, but I remember those that I listed for sure. So we did open the Evenly, so we have that going for us at the very least. Opponent ended up opening Maxi, Extrav, Rabina, and Dimensional Fissure, which is definitely rough, even when you do happen to open evenly, so... Alright, opponent's going for the M-Pen, wheeling back the Rabina, setting the Dreaming Town, and then passing back over to me. So I'm going to go for my battle phase here, throw down my evenly match. Opponent's going to leave the Dimensional Fissure, which I did expect, and I unfortunately am going to immediately make a misplay here. See, for some reason, it just did not click in my brain that I'd already used my battle phase to go for... evenly, and that I couldn't Zeus here. I was like, oh, I get to Zoodiac Drident, blow up Dimensional Fissure, and then still have 2 board wipes with Zeus, except oops, I already used my my battle phase. So It was rough, yeah. I even went in Twitch chat, people were like, why no Zeus? Why no Zeus? And I'm like, I already used my battle phase! But it was a misplay on my part. I should have gone for Bagooska, like, and I'm sure I haven't watched that part of the VOD back yet. It's actually, like, still, like, an hour ago is when I played this duel at the time I'm recording this, so, well, I guess like an hour and a half ago now after the recording, but, yeah, I just ultimately ended up, yeah, misplaying. There's also a bit of fatigue to it as well, I will admit. I should have eaten more during the day because I was hungry at that point, and just ultimately fatigued from using my brain so much during the day. Those are the excuses I'll give, but I don't know. If I had gone into Bagooska, right, then my opponent would have been really able to do too much. Although, did they have Book of Moon? I know they have it now, but did they have it before? Because they actually could have potentially used that to turn Bagooska face down and play anyway. But best case scenario, Bagooska would have stalled out their turn. Then on my turn, I could have turned Bagooska to attack, battled, Zeus swipe to the board. But I mean, my top deck was Valor. I guess I could have Valored a potential Rabina follow-up, but this is all very hypothetical at this point. I don't know. My opponent could have easily still had Book of Moon anyway, but I'm ultimately going to end up conceding after this point. But Suzumu is an excellent Flanders player and played very, very well during these games. So very, very well played to you, my friend. And that is going to ultimately do it for this tournament report. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. I definitely had a blast, as I always do, playing in the MCS, and I'm very glad to have gotten my second top 8 finish now. I am very much looking forward to playing in the big tournament here in June, but I think that's going to go ahead and do it, so let's just move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now, so without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.